It's strange, isn't it, how we use the word wonder? On the one hand, it represents this grand, inexpressible sense of something infinite. And on the other hand, it sort of gussies up the most mundane and trivial of quandaries and queries. As in, I wonder what we should have for dinner. Or, I was wondering, as a clumsy setup for asking your friend if you can borrow their truck. The two senses in which we use the word are so far apart, one wonders if there's any connection at all. Of course, there is, etymologically, but what about the experience of wonder versus that of wondering? If you think about the last time you were filled with wonder and compare it with the last time you were wondering about something, is there any overlap? I've been pondering this over the last couple of months, and I think they do have something in common. Both experiences can essentially be described as not knowing, or rather, an awareness that one does not know. They're both akin to a feeling of curiosity, whether open-ended or specific. The sentence, "I wonder," is complete, yet it points toward infinity. Both senses of the word are deeply human characteristics. We wonder. It's kind of our whole thing. We wonder what would happen if. We wonder what lies beyond. We wonder why. In both senses, wondering can lead you down a path, or it can stop you in your tracks. And stopping in your tracks, also known as pausing or lingering, makes way for and even invites wonder and wondering. Today, we are talking about the relationship between wonder and wondering, how one can lead to the other and back again. I'm Ellen Riccio, and this is First Creatures. I've been seeing more and more life advice on the internet about the importance of seeking out experiences of wonder and awe. We are encouraged to watch the sunrise, to travel, to immerse ourselves in nature, to look at art and listen to music, to gaze at the stars. Doing so, we are told, will reduce stress, increase our creative powers, and make us feel more connected, like we're a small part of something big. To be clear, I am in favor of this. There's no doubt in my mind that this is something we desperately need in our world. We need to not just know, but feel that we are connected, not only to each other, but to everything. We need to be reminded of how small, how fragile, how breathtakingly brief our lives are. But some of the advice about wonder comes across, at least to me, as sort of like the cherry on top of living your best life. Like, first you need to focus on your health, and once you're healthy, you should strive for wellness and well-being. And once you've got that pretty much under control, wonder awaits you, the final frontier of wellness. I think that reclaiming our sense of wonder, as well as allowing time and space for wondering, in our public, private and inner lives is a lot more important and urgent than its relegation to the self-help genre would suggest. And whereas many of these articles emphasize the importance of action, of actively seeking out and even chasing wonder, booking the plane ticket, driving to the mountains, they miss the crucial role that stopping plays. To stop what you are doing, or to stop and look at what catches your eye, as in the new 5-second rule from episode 1, is to make space for wonder. Even if you travel to the other side of the globe, or go on a hike, or kayak across a lake at sunset, if you never stop, wonder is kept at bay. So what is wonder? What are we talking about? Wonder, in this first sense, means to marvel, to be amazed, awestruck, astonished, to be momentarily at a loss for words. It's a feeling of reverence for something unknown or inexplicable. In Dutch, wonder is the word for miracle. Wonder is a flash of apprehending what is beyond us, what is unknowable for us. A child with an extraordinary gift is a wonder. We don't understand where their ability comes from. Another shading of the word in this first sense is that it means to be surprised by something, taken aback. Wonder strikes us unexpectedly, like when a hummingbird appears outside our kitchen window, or when magnificent storm clouds appear on the horizon. These are invitations to stop what we are doing, or at least to pause our conversation, and just be in awe. If we give these opportunities a hard pass because of some vague notion of needing to use our time wisely, well, that's ironic. To me, to ignore an invitation like this is a tiny tragedy, at least when viewed from the imaginary perspective of the vast quantity of sheer matter in the universe that doesn't get to have eyes and ears. As Alan Watts famously said, "Through our eyes, the universe is perceiving itself. Through our ears, the universe is listening to its harmonies. We are the witnesses through which the universe becomes conscious of its glory, of its magnificence." So stopping, or pausing, or lingering, makes space for wonder to bloom. But what's interesting to me is that consciously pausing, making a decision to stop and pay attention to something that hasn't necessarily grabbed you, also tends to invite and inspire wonder. Think about all the little creatures that are part of our environment every single day. Squirrels, pigeons, ants, spiders. We're so used to seeing them that we don't usually give them a second thought. But if we were to stop and observe them for a minute or two, we would see just how wondrous they are. They can all do things that we can't do, and they speak languages we don't understand. It's a sad existence to look at a bird as beautiful as a pigeon and only be able to see the mess it's going to make on your car. And it's not just living beings with wings and tiny feet that can inspire wonder. If you live in a city, you are surrounded by layer upon layer of human innovation and technological advances, some of them dating back so far that we forget that they are, in fact, examples of technology, and that they were once innovative. Stop to look at a brick wall long enough, and you'll almost inevitably begin to imagine the day it was built, one brick at a time. And you might marvel at the fact that humans figured out how to manipulate clay to build structures that can stand for centuries. So, to be suddenly struck with wonder is an invitation to stop. And to stop is an invitation to wonder. Said another way, we can't expect to experience wonder if we refuse to stop. Pressing pause in our lives makes way for the other kind of wondering as well, the kind that isn't upheld as the pinnacle of healthy living. Technically speaking, the kind of wonder we've been discussing up until now is a noun. Wonder is a thing you feel, or are filled with. This other kind is a verb. Wondering is something you do. You actively wonder about something. Another way of thinking about the difference between these two senses of the word is that wonder, the noun, is a general feeling, while wonder, the verb, implies a specific question. You can wonder at the immensity of our galaxy, but you wonder what you should do about the funny sound your car has been making. This is kind of an unfair connotation, but it is how we generally use these words. One kind of wonder is elevated, while the other is mundane. But here again, I see more of a connection between the two than is generally thought to be the case. Wondering, as in asking specific questions, can be born of a general feeling of awe, a sense of possibilities shooting out in infinite directions. A great example of this is a human baby who spends the first few years of their life being completely astonished by everything around them, and as soon as they can form sentences, out comes an endless stream of questions. You can imagine an accelerated version of this process happening in your own mind, right? Let's say you're taken aback by the sight of something magnificent, a whale, or an unbelievable sunset, or a child behaving with such kindness and thoughtfulness. And eventually, that general feeling of wonder might yield a specific question, like, I wonder what inspired that child to be so kind. Or, I wonder how old that whale is. Or, in the case of the sunset, I wonder why I never do this. This is the path of scientific inquiry, feeling a sense of wonder and curiosity about the world, and formulating precise and specific questions about it. We mostly talk about the hypothesis, that precise and specific question in the form of a statement, as the beginning of scientific inquiry. But I think it must often begin with a more general sense of wonder. I mean, it's not like everyone who came before Sir Isaac Newton also wondered why apples fell straight down to the ground rather than sideways or upwards, and he was just the first one to figure it out. It was that moment of realizing that we don't actually know, that flash of wonder, that led him, eventually, to the discovery of gravity. So this is how wonder can lead to wondering. And by the way, I do not mean to suggest that wonder is only valuable if it leads to wondering. I'm only trying to point out the relationship between the two, and it's a relationship that goes both ways. Wondering, provided you stop to do so, can also lead to a sense of wonder. For instance, let's say you're having a conversation with someone, and you begin to genuinely wonder about them. What makes them tick? What makes them the way they are? What sorts of things they wonder about? Rather than working to keep the conversation going horizontally, you are now willing to stop, in a sense, and dive deeply into this moment, into this other person's world. The questions you ask from this place of stillness, and the space you are prepared to allow for the other person to answer, may help you see this person in a new light, and you might marvel at their strength, their courage, their humility. The same transformation of wondering into wonder can happen with all kinds of things in the natural world. Our curiosity can inspire us to examine and observe something more closely, which often results in a sense of wonder, whether it's because we're amazed by the beauty or complexity of the object, or simply because of the astonishing fact that this should exist at all, a fact that isn't the least bit astonishing unless you stop to think about it. And, in fact, intentionally wondering about the human-made world can lead to a sense of wonder as well. If you don't take your immediate surroundings, or the pyramids, or Stonehenge, or the Golden Gate Bridge, as matters of fact, but as incredible feats of human ingenuity, collaboration, and fortitude, the wonders are endless. So if you find yourself wondering about something, about how it was made, who designed it, when it was invented, and you allow yourself to follow your curiosity, you just might be amazed. It's no wonder we don't have as much wonder in our lives as people did thousands of years ago. I mean, imagine not knowing what causes a rainbow to appear, let alone the northern lights or a solar eclipse. We've figured a lot of stuff out. We can explain it, so it's not a miracle anymore. But I think there's another reason we don't wonder much. I think we just don't have the time. Or at least that's how we feel. We imagine that wondering means lying in the grass and staring at the clouds, or taking a weekend trip to the mountains or the beach, or perhaps visiting the Grand Canyon. And none of those are things we're going to be able to do anytime soon, so nice podcast, Ellen. But I think wondering can be a lot more humble, available, and frequent than we tend to imagine. In fact, I'm suggesting that perhaps we ought to do it more often, not only in our private lives and in our free time, but also when we're at work. Yes, you're getting paid to work, not to wonder. And I'm not advocating for simply slacking off. And of course, there are moments when it would be highly inappropriate to pause and think. I'm speaking broadly about our work culture here, about the feeling many people have that there's this big rush buffeting us along at all times. And I'm simply saying that we might do well to occasionally take our foot off the gas and look around. This could look like taking a beat before hitting send, or interrupting your own thought process to see if something new occurs to you, or wondering aloud at a meeting. Of course, if someone speaks up during a meeting where consensus has nearly been reached and begins by saying, "I wonder," yeah, that person is going to get some dirty looks. Unless they can fully articulate their critique and or present a viable alternative, they're going to get brushed to the side, even though it is precisely the kind of person who stops to wonder that may be able to eventually come up with a better idea. We're so forward-focused and driven that it's actually kind of annoying if someone stops to wonder. We like people who are sure, who take action, who are decisive. We uphold things like determination, perseverance, efficiency, and drive. We do not tend to admire things like hesitation or indecision. The person who stops to wonder is seen to be throwing a wrench in the works, or to be a stick in the mud, or to be a drag. To stop and wonder in that scenario is viewed as inviting doubt, opening the door for second-guessing, or causing a needless delay or even the derailment of the entire project. Most people don't relish the thought of being that one guy in 12 Angry Men. Thus, large and terribly consequential decisions get pushed through our supposed checks and balances like carrots through a juicer. a lot of what we call determination and certainty might honestly be more akin to impatience. I think impatience might be even more of a virtue than patience in our culture. People don't want to take the time to hear each other out, to consider possible alternatives seriously, to weigh their choices, to engage with the issue and demand satisfactory answers. Getting it done is the virtue we uphold most, despite all our circling back, sleeping on it, and letting it marinate. Taking action, almost any action, is applauded. On the surface, progress appears to be made, even if underneath, the foundation is cracking. We have all kinds of pejorative terms for hesitation, including procrastination and faltering. But some of my personal favorites are dilly-dallying, hemming and hawing, and lollygagging. Let's face it, there are a lot of people who, consciously or not, don't want you to wonder. People who are trying to sell you something don't want you to stop and wonder. People who profit or benefit from your productivity don't want you to stop and wonder. And then there are plenty of people who just don't want you to rock the boat. So there are all these societal forces that discourage us from wondering, and plenty of historical reasons why we don't have as much occasion to experience wonder as did our predecessors. So why is it important to seek out wonder and to insist on wondering in our public, private, and inner lives? Well, two reasons, mainly. One makes you feel good, and the other makes you feel kind of bad. First of all, as we discussed earlier in the episode, to wonder is human. It's one of the highest, most brain-tingling pleasures we have. It makes your life richer, increases your feeling for life. It shrinks you in a good way. And to pause while working is to insist on your own humanity. To borrow an idea from the philosopher Byung-Chul Han, a walk which lacks the capacity to stop, whether to smell the flowers, to talk to a neighbor, to look at the scenery, freezes into a march. And work, which lacks the capacity to stop, to hesitate, to consider, to deliberate, recalibrate, freezes into labor. The second reason it's good to stop and wonder is moral. Experiencing wonder puts you in touch with the fact that you are not actually at the center of the universe. And stopping to wonder what unintended impact your plans might have, or what the potential effects of the words that are about to come out of your mouth might be, that's responsible, not weak. You might ask yourself, is this really a good idea? Or is there another way we could do this? Does this really need to be done right now? Or even, am I part of the problem? A hilarious yet profound illustration of this is found in a sketch by British comedy duo David Mitchell and Robert Webb. In this sketch, Mitchell and Webb are playing World War II-era soldiers who have just noticed that the symbols on their uniforms and caps are skulls. Visibly disquieted and discomfited by this, one says to the other, "Are we the baddies?" The moral import of stopping to wonder, even when dealing with urgent matters, is soberingly, chillingly laid out in an essay called Of Accidental Judgments and Casual Slaughters, written by sociologist Kai Erikson. I came across it in Volume 1 of the Best American Essays series. But this essay was first published in The Nation 40 years ago, exactly 40 years after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In the essay, Erikson calls into question the popular understanding of the sequence of events and circumstances that led President Truman to make the difficult decision to drop the atomic bomb on a civilian population. Erikson puts decision to drop in quotation marks, and goes on to show that it is difficult, the more you dig into the record, to make out where exactly in the flow of events anything like an actual decision was made. Instead, he suggests that the decision was, quote, shaped and seasoned by a force very like inertia, end quote. There's Sir Isaac Newton again. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. I'm not a history buff by any means, so I'm not going to assert that Erikson has got it all right. But reading his essay did remind me of situations I have both observed and been a part of, in which a project seemed to be carried along unstoppably by an anonymous and invisible force, despite any objections that were raised. Obviously, none were anywhere near as destructive as the Manhattan Project. But it makes you wonder about how much pain and suffering and violence we are capable of bringing into the world simply because of our desire to stay in motion. So, for the sake of your own humanity, and for the sake of humanity, ask yourself, did you ever stop to wonder today? Support for First Creatures comes from our listeners. Thank you to everyone who has signed up for monthly donations, including our newest supporter, Judy Crenshaw. To learn more about First Creatures and to find out how you can support the podcast, visit firstcreatures.com. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.